today we are super lucky to have the one, the only, give us some of the tips and tricks. One of the things that I think that you guys do so well.
When we found lean back in 2012, 2013.
7 times as productive. 7 times. It's a pretty radical turnaround from when you started to where you are today. Welcome everybody to another podcast on the shop floor. I'm Brad Cairns, your host, and today we are super lucky to have the one, the only, Dustin Hunter from Hunter Trim and Cabinets with us today. And the subject of today is going to be flow. Now, before we delve into flow, I would love for you to just give everyone, let's break it down into when you started, a couple of years after you started, when you discovered lean, and where you are today, and then we'll tie that all neatly into a little package that we're going to call flow. So take it away, Mr. Dustin Hunter.
Great, thanks for having me. I've been watching the podcast. I know this is a new series, so thanks for having me. Glad to contribute, do my part here, and pay it forward if I can. Hopefully we'll share some things that are of value to some people today.
Hopefully, I'm going to assure you that, that Dustin is one of the most humble people I've ever met. Out of all of the shops I know that you're doing it right. So yeah.
Well, we've been doing it a long time. We started doing business about end of 05, beginning of 06. Like many people, small shop, couple guys. Just a woodworker at heart, and learned pretty quickly. We didn't really know what we didn't know, but with that came, some lean things along the way. So 5-6 years in, we were having problems with lead times and quality issues and delivery times and all that kind of stuff. And much like you, found lean through FDMC with Jim, our good friend Jim, and much like you, I just called him out of the blue. I sent him an email, to be fair. But so that's when I got introduced to lean. That was late 2012, and I actually called him to. We were building a new plant at the time, and I needed some help laying it out. It really wasn't to learn lean. Little did I know where this was going to go. So,
now, just quickly before you. Like from zero to discovering lean, what was kind of like the business doing? What was it like? How was the shop?
Yeah, so we were pretty old school. We were cutting cabinets out with table saws. We're in the custom space in the Dallas-Fort Worth market. I don't remember the head count. Well, I do remember the head count in 012. It was about 8-9 people, maybe 10 on the high side, in our shop floor, and me in the office. That was it. 10-11 people all in. We were doing numbers. I'm a numbers guy. Less than $1 million, I think $700,000-800,000 at the time.
Right.
And very hand to mouth, making wages. Honestly, if I'm being fair. And then we found lean, and interesting enough, in the first year we doubled in size. Same staff. So we knew pretty early on we were onto something, and that. This could be the path forward. Little did we know, 10, almost 12 years later, where it would take us.
And we'll get there for everybody listening. We'll create a little bit of a suspense on where you are now. But you breezed over that pretty quick, and I wanted to make sure that everybody caught that, was that you discovered lean, you doubled in size. You didn't double in people.
Absolutely not.
You doubled in throughput.
Absolutely.
So we discovered lean, throughput doubled, not company-wide doubled. So that I just wanted to make sure that
you got it right. And really, over the first 4 to 5 years, we had a 5x growth So it went really fast, and we learned a lot, made a lot of mistakes, clearly, and but you know, we were pedal to the metal. So we were learning as we went, and still learning to this day. So wouldn't say we got it all figured out. For sure.
Well, you're definitely from the quantum lean side. From, you know, if I switch hats for a quick second, you're one of our poster child customers. Humble enough to still learn, but just absolutely, I just love coming to your factory. You're just rocking on every possible metric that I've ever seen a shop measured on. And, you know, I think if I was you, I'd probably have a t-shirt running around saying, I'm the best woodworker in the world. You're a pretty humble guy, which is pretty amazing. We will couple this video with some B-roll or something to kind of show your factory, because you have just built like the most amazing, gorgeous factory I've ever seen in my life. So now let's start to talk about flow.
Sure.
Because flow, you know, when we talk about, we are going to specialize on, for this podcast, we're going to say, I would like to do a deep dive on your line, but flow doesn't just start on the line.
That's right.
Flow starts at the beginning. So out of all of the other, you know, myriad of things that you're doing right, like, how do you start to create flow through that organization? Because if you double your throughput with the same amount of people, you have effectively increased flow. So give us some of the tips and tricks, because I don't know anyone listening that doesn't want to double their throughput.
Yeah, so I think it begins at the very beginning, from, you know, when we get a call. And I think it starts with, you know, good processes and continuous improvement. So it starts from the time we get the call all the way through the design stuff. You know, really what we're trying to do is balance the workload throughout our entire organization. And as you know, as things grow and things, you know, the throughput goes up, well, we have to adjust sales. Or sales goes up, we have to adjust the throughput, and vice versa. And really all of the other elements, engineering, install, all that has to, you know, kind of grow at the same or close to the same rate, which is really challenging, as I'm sure so many people listening to this know. But it really starts at the beginning, and, you know, we track everything. We keep numbers on everything, from how many calls come in every day, so we can balance that, and we can extrapolate that to how much and when that should turn into a job that's on our shop floor. So it starts really early on, and really balancing everything out, from the flow from sales and design into engineering to production, and production into install. Okay,
and that's critical for everyone to understand. For the sake of this podcast, you are what we would call a custom shop. There's no doubt about that. I mean, You build high-end custom kitchens. I've seen some of the homes that they go into. They're beautiful. So whatever we're talking about, I don't want someone in the background going, oh but I'm custom. That's not going to work for me.
Yeah. A process. I mean, it all starts with process. You know, I consider us to be one of the most custom people in the Dallas-Fort Worth market, and we wouldn't tell our customers or our builders, but, you know, I would say on the low side 80, but probably in the 90%, if not higher, of what we do is the same over and over. Yes, it's different sizes and different heights, but it's still 4 pieces of wood and a door and a drawer, and there's different combinations and all these variables. But at the end of the day, the process of how we get there and the process of how we execute it is very repeatable, and this is where lean, you know, fits in great.
And I think that's just so critical for anybody who has that all work custom mentality, because that, as soon as you say that doesn't work and I'm custom, you know, I'll quote Henry Ford, and he says, well, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. So right. Just having that train of thought may prevent you from, you know, realizing the throughput gains that you've had, because you're saying, I just can't do it. You throw your arms up and say, I can't do it, instead of, how many of these tools in this toolbox can I use? Instead of, no, none of them work for me. You know, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, when in your case, 80 to 90% of your production is repeatable, which we can apply a lot of very cool flow characteristics to.
Yeah, lots of broke woodworkers out there, you know. So You know, I know we're trying to start talking about profit in our lean community and stuff, and you know, I think that's something that a lot of people shy away from. But I'm certainly not getting rich by no stretch. But we have figured out a way to stabilize our company, and I mean, and it trickles down to our employees, you know, which is another big piece of lean and growing people and treating them right with dignity and being able to give them resources and benefits and all kinds of, you know, really cool things that it's allowed us to do. So
and all of that, like everything you want to do for someone, everything you want to give someone, every time you want to make their job easier, the path forward to that is flow. Everything always comes back to flow. How can we get that job through sales, through design, through our production engineer, onto the shop floor, out of the shop, onto the site? And you know, I think far too many guys that are in that custom space, or they're I'm custom, I have to do everything in my life the hard way. We just need to break that down, and I think that you're the perfect guy to talk to about that, because I watch it in your factory. So how do you, if we just go backwards a little bit, is there anything between, you know, like sales and engineering that you think you got right that helps your flow?
well, again, leveling this and staffing it correctly. You know, we track engineering hours and we weight jobs, so we know, or we estimate how long they should take to get through each process. And so knowing that is really important. So we know how many hours we need to feed that department each week to be able to, you know, have a level or a balanced workload. You know, so those guys aren't drowning in work and then starving for work. And it certainly happens. But the less we can do that and, you know, smooth things out from each department, not just sales to engineering, but engineering to production, the better off we are, the better our team works, the less stress we all have. So it's really critical to balance it all. I think, you know, that's probably the most critical thing and the most challenging thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, that goes back to the Japanese principle of heijunka, which is to balance your workload. I mean, if you're busy one week and not busy the next week, how you can't manage that. You can't hire 40 people one day and 20 people the next week. So, you know,
Yep.
So how do you go about balancing that then? If you're looking at your workload, we're talking let's just kind of focus a pre-shop release.
Mm-hmm.
How do you look at balancing that workload?
So, you know, we've been tracking things for a long time, so we have a lot of data that we use and analyze. I mean, I think if you're not tracking things, it makes this really tough at really all levels. And it could be as simple as how many cabinets do we do a day? Okay, then you just, you know, you back this up. It's without that data, I don't know how you do it, to be frank. I don't know how you do it at all, honestly.
I mean, this is like the first thing we tell every shop that calls us. I mean, here, I'm going to save everybody. I'll save everybody their first phone call right now. Start measuring.
Yeah.
Like have a baseline, and I don't care what you measure, just don't change it, because, and again, so we're going to run into someone, but I'm custom, I can't measure, and I'm going to say, the law of averages works out. You know, it's going to get you pretty close.
Yeah.
So what data do you guys track that helps you to
So we weight a project points, as you know, this is somewhat challenging for people to understand, but I'll see if I can simplify it as much as I can. But you know, we take the complexity of the job, price comes into that, and then we take that and it gives us a number, a numerical number, and then we just divide it by how many cabinets are in that job. So each cabinet is now worth 10 points or whatever they're worth. And if you track that and keep it consistent, I think that's really important, that you don't move the goalpost, because that really skews things. Over some time, and even after 60, 90 days, you now have a baseline. It's not a great baseline because it's not that long, but the longer you do it, the more accurate that stuff gets. And you know, we've made some tweaks to it over the years, but after, you know, 8, 9 years of that, it's really down and really predictable, repeatable, which is all the things that we want in our company.
These are all the metrics and all of the words that we keep hearing from, you know, quote unquote successful companies. they're using these words, oh, the production is predictable, stable, repeatable, and so, you know, how many companies we've talked to are like, listen, you got to start measuring, and the measuring has to start in your estimating department, and everyone's like, oh man, I'm gonna pile that onto my estimators now, and how are we gonna do that? And it's just like, so for everyone making excuses as to why they can't come up with this number, what would you advise them?
There's not a one size fits all. I think, you know, and everything with lean kind of fits into what I'm going to say. Take and make it yours. There's not, you know, these are principles. They're not hard coded things that you have to do. You have to take and apply it to your circumstances and think. I think that's a pretty important part that a lot of people have struggled with. But you got to think, and you got to think outside the box and use your resources and your teams and communities like we're part of. How are other people doing it? You know, there's a great place to start. Mm-hmm. You know, everybody in this community is more than willing to share how they do things, and most of us in great detail. We don't have time to get into some of that detail today, but you know, you have to start somewhere, and you have to, you know, persevere.
Yeah, you raise a good point with that whole community thing, because I mean, why do you have to learn? If you're a guy just starting out, why do you want to make all of those mistakes? Why do you want to have to study how your shop is running from a flow perspective for 15 years to finally figure it out? Why wouldn't you just connect with, like, you know, connect with us at Quantum Lean, connect with some community in your area, take your pick. But there's people out there like you and me, we've made those mistakes for years and years and years. We've learned from them, and boy, are we happy to help people avoid them going forward. So it's just like, don't do that.
Come see us.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many people in this community.
Says, show me, right?
Yeah, that have open doors, and you know, come see the people. I've been to tons of places, got the opportunity to go see so many places, and we'll continue to do that because we always learn something everywhere we go.
Yeah. One of the things that I think that you guys do so well, I mean so well, is the physical production line where you build things. And before I give it away, maybe let you tell us how you build cabinets in a custom shop that builds plywood cabinets with face frames, and like it's as custom as anyone's gonna claim to be custom. But how does your line work at the Hunter Trim and Cabinet Factory?
So we have 4 lines. I think that's probably critical for everybody to understand. We have a half-inch overlay, inset, a beaded inset, and a frameless line. So it works for everything.
Okay, hang on. Not for production lines, for product
for
lines.
Product lines,
Yeah,
yes.
awesome.
Good question. So the way that our facility is designed is CNCs, you know, is where we cut out all the case parts. From there, the CNC is positioned right in front of our line. Our line consists of 4 sequenced benches, if you would, a car line, if you will. And at the front of that, between the CNC and that first line, there is a deviation, right, for the super custom things, because we definitely do some, you know, some pretty crazy hoods and one-off pieces for every project. They go down a subordinating line that has 2 benches, 2 custom guys, if you will, and but 90+% goes down the main line. And what happens is the first person cases it, you know, or boxes the cabinet, if you will, and then it moves to the next station where the front or the face is put on. And then it moves to the next station where the doors are put on, and then finally the drawers, and then the doors last. And then it comes off and it gets a QC, and then it's put in a staging area. So it's very linear. And then the other part that's really critical to make all this work is all of the subordinating operations are exactly 90 degrees or perpendicular where it comes. So for example, at the second bench, my face frames come in right there. Behind that is my drawer department. It subordinates the line. So the travel time and the moving of parts is very limited. And then we have buffers set up that's a clear start stop at each station, so we know when we're struggling and when to stop before we overproduce.
Right. So how do you? So say you have a complex box, and that starts off with the guy who's doing the, what did you call it, casing,
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Sure.
He's putting together the box.
Mm-hmm.
He slides it down to the next guy that's doing the face frames. but then he's got an easy box behind it.
Sure.
And so now he's going faster than the face frame guy. How do you balance those stages? Because this is where we're going to lose people if we're not very careful in explaining how this works.
So this is certainly not easy, and I wouldn't suggest that we have this figured out. But in theory,
he has it figured out.
In theory, and what's supposed to happen in a perfect world is as things gum up at the second station, the guy in front of him can build one, maybe two cabinets, and then he has nowhere to go. He has to go downstream to help. And then vice versa. If we're starving the back of the line, the guy at the next station, instead of him sitting there, he's coming upstream to help. Or maybe just taking that to his station. So it's not perfect, certainly. It definitely has its moments. But that's how it works. You move up and down the line one station at a time, depending on what's needed.
Right. So you're not only flowing the product down a line, but then you start flowing the people back and forth. And would you say, generally speaking, they don't have to jump more than one station ish?
No, yeah, they never have to move more than one station.
Right.
Well, never is a big word, but
right.
yeah, that's very, very rare. Yes.
Okay, so now we've got this line, and I've been there. I've seen it running, and it is phenomenal. We've got something that you touched on, which was now we have to subordinate a lot of components to the production of those cabinets. Now, you said that your face frames are 90 degrees away from the line, so if I'm trying to figure out, like, people listening, so
Right.
the line is going straight. On the right hand side of the line, you have a bench with a cabinet maker who's doing his task, if it's the box guy. Now, it moves down one, there's a bench who's the face frame guy. Now, on the other side of that bench is where your face frames come into play. But you said it so fast, people might not have caught that that's where they build the face frame too.
Everything is done. There's cells. So there's a cell directly next to where the frame goes on, feet apart. There's an aisle there, but really, then there's a face frame table and an upcut saw and a sander. Everything is within that cell. He never has to leave it. And then, he literally hands it to him.
Yeah, I was going to say, for everyone listening, the cell that's building, whether it's the face frame, the drawers, or the doors, is literally 4 feet away from the line where they're getting put on. So how many face frames do you build ahead? How does your subordinated activity know when to start and stop in order to maintain flow?
So carts, right, which are not always the best thing in our world, but you do have to have some kind of visual trigger. So my face frame guy, we have a cart built, it holds 5 face frames. He has 2 carts. If he fills up the 2 carts, he has to stop. There's nowhere else to put them. He can't put them on the floor, and as long as there's space, he's just working at a normal pace. In the event that gets drained, it went to 0, some weird thing, a machine went down or something like that, then a manager or supervisor would hopefully see that in time and pull a resource from somewhere else. So we never stop. Our goal is to never let cabinets stop going down the line. We protect that at all costs.
Right.
And we've established some rules around that, and they're really basic. Essentially, it never can stop. I mean, that's
there's one rule, and where the line can never stop.
And we use the quantum lean counter at the end of our line to see if we're on target or off. That gets recalibrated every day depending on the product mix. That's how we subordinate it.
Right, and I think that's really important manufacturing principle for everybody to get their head around, is that, and I believe I'm going to quote Dr. Goldratt here. He says, if every station in your factory is operating 100% of the time, you are very inefficient. And I know, so at our company, we're building machines now, and it's taking off to a point where we're like, wow, we need to get some significant software now to help us out. And this guy's demoing the software to me, and he's telling me that because their software is going to track every single station, I can increase the uptime of every single station. And it was all I could do to just keep my big mouth shut. I'm like, this guy doesn't need a lean seminar right now on the phone. Right. But listen, this is a serious problem where we used to think, and many people do now, that something running 100% of the time is good. And I just want to clear the air on that, and it's not your bottleneck, or better yet, you turn your bottleneck into what we would refer to as a control point.
Yes.
Your control point runs 100% of the time, and everything around it has start and stop triggers, and it is cheaper to pay someone for their readiness. Like your face frame guy, if he gets to 10 face frames, he has to stop.
He has to stop, that's right.
Who cares what he's doing? Just please just stop first, because nothing that you can do will be more expensive than overproducing.
Right.
So now you have this happening 3 times down your line, because in lockstep 4 times
Yeah.
with your cabinets, you're building face frames, drawers, and doors, all in little cells 90 degrees away from your line.
And it's a sequencing. This is a puzzle, right? Every day in the custom world that we live in, every day's a little different. Today's job we may need 60 sheets, and the same job that's relatively the same size tomorrow may be 70 sheets. So there's some adjustment that has to be made from our CNC. And face frames, doors are the exact same. So finding those mediums to hopefully man those, if you will, so you have the right head count in each cell to hopefully keep the line from stopping, is challenging, and that's some trial and error. And we track all that. We know how many sheets a day we cut. We know how many doors we make a day. We know how many drawers and face frames and so forth. And we know what the takt times are for all of those events as well. So we know with some certainty of what that is and some predictability. Again, and that just really just helps everything to flow so much smoother. But we're human, we make mistakes, and we have bad days just like everybody else. But one of the things we really try to do too is we try to understand that. We have an improvement time every morning, as so many people that watch this do. And we really dig into that to try to understand it so we can hopefully avoid it in the future.
So let's talk about sequencing a bit. We mentioned that word a few times, and I want to know how you do it, and I'm sure everybody listening is like, okay, sure, cabinets are going down the line, but how do you physically, or do you use production triggers? Like, how are you sequencing that the right face frame is getting made for the right cabinet going down that line?
We'll do some really basic things, and we've really kind of just in the last 90 days, we've really been working on buffer management. And we've been making some adjustments and running the experiment for a couple weeks, and then making some more adjustments to see how it impacts it. But it starts with sequencing everything. So we use cabinet vision like many cabinet makers do, but whether you use a microvellum or whatever, it gives everything a number. So every cabinet has a number. So it's really critical that every department builds in the correct order. So that's where it starts. We batch things on our CNC, and I know that's a bad word in this community, but you still have to batch some things.
Batching's not bad.
Not bad. You're right.
Bad.
You're right. But there's a lot of misconceptions around that, and you do have to batch some things. We do mostly single piece flow in all the other cells. I will tell you that. But it's really important that everything gets built in the same order. So we know when cabinet 1 gets to the bench, he's boxing cabinet 1. Cabinet 1 is the first one in the rack, for the face frame, excuse me. So, and same thing for the drawers. We sequence them, so sequencing, I think, is where it has to start. And then...
So you're using cabinet numbers from the drawings to sequence. Now, what about, if we just back up one station to the CNC, what's your batch size? Like how many boxes are you sending out for a nest?
We do 30.
30, okay.
Which is, for us, it's around a day's worth of work. So the other thing with all of our carts, and everything is sequenced this way, everything should have 1 day build in front of it. So that's our buffer. That allows us for the CNC operator not showing up today, or the CNC going down, and everything else with all the other departments. So that gives us a day's time to overcompensate, when there is a problem. Right. And it's still, it gets really tight sometimes.
I was just gonna say that. I'm like,
but it happens.
What happens with manufacturers? They get a hold of this 8 deadly waste thing, and they hear us talking about batch sizes. Batches are bad, and inventory is bad, and they go too lean, too fast. And for anyone listening, if you think 1 day's inventory is too much, you're crazy. One day, in my opinion, if you ask my advice, I would say that's not enough. Because you've only bought yourself one day for Murphy, which could be a broken part, but the only way to reduce that time, or to reduce how much inventory you have, is to have backup plans. So you have 2 CNC routers.
Correct.
So if it takes on average 3 days to get a part for your CNC and one breaks, you have another one. So that allows you to squeeze down to that one day. But I'm going to say the average small cabinet shop does not have 2 CNCs. In that case, like, you guys need to dramatically increase your inventory, and flow comes first before inventory. Never running out of parts on your line comes first before reducing your inventory. So until your line is running every single day, never running out of parts, now start reducing your inventory. And don't Dustin, you're what's 10 years into lean, and you're executing it at a high level. I would say don't do what Dustin's doing tomorrow. Like, work your way into that.
Well, we had some lessons learned, certainly getting here, and really even in recent times. I mean, just in the last year or two, we used to not have one day at all the stations, and it really the ebb and flow of it, really, we struggled with it. And since we went to this, it has balanced things and calmed things down. So we used to really just, hey, he needs a face frame in 15 minutes, build a face frame. And we had some things really that tight. But man, if there is just one little snag, or, guy leaves early, or, all the things that just happen, it really disrupts some things. So one day is kind of where we've settled. It seems to have been working. But yeah, there's, again, take this principle, apply it to your circumstances. Don't just jump into what I do because I said it, or anybody else for that matter. You have to start somewhere and build it around your systems and what works for you.
Okay, so now let's go back to this line, because this is the fascinating part. We go to shops all over North America, and I'm exposed to it on the lean side. Now we're building machinery, and we're going into factories that are like, because we're building sanding robots, like a lot of pretty crazy factories are buying these robots. And so I'm getting exposed to a lot of very interesting ways of running cabinet shops. Now, this flow line with a face frame and being custom, I think it's a heck of a good way to create flow. But how do you get your guys to want to do that? Because half the people listening right now have crusty old cabinet makers that love their bench to not be the same as anyone else's bench, to have all of their tools on it, and they want to stand there whittling this cabinet for 3 days or whatever. It's hard to get them to let go of that and say, you build the box, you put on the face frame, you pick what you're good at, and you guys just do that as a team, versus breaking up a job and giving one guy at one bench a whole kitchen and just say, keep building till some arbitrary time when you're finished building it. Like, how did you get started? That was a long-winded way of saying, how do you get your guys to want to work together on this line?
It takes time. It certainly didn't happen overnight. We've been doing this, 10, 12 years now. Toyota's been doing it for 60, something like that. Early 40s, 50s, something like that, 70. It takes so much time and effort and persistence and perseverance. And more than likely, well, I can only speak for us, I guess, but you'll have to, not everyone will make it.
Right.
But what are your goals for a company? What do you want the culture to be like? Do you want some angry guy over here that has to do it his way, or do you want a team player? I would say, generally speaking, most people, rallied and have accepted our way of thinking. But there were certainly some people along the way that didn't make it.
Right. So. And when you hire new people, it's not a big issue to acclimate them. It's only the initial startup. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I mean, so we do so much better hiring now, and we try to sniff that out. We do a trial period for a week to test people out. But really, and I'm very genuine when we when we hire people on for this trial, and I tell them, I say, listen, we're interviewing you, but you're interviewing us just as much as we're interviewing you. And the last thing that I want is for me to hire you and you work here for 6 months and then just like, this isn't for me. Mm-hmm. So I really encourage them to really ask lots of questions and really listen to what's going on in our morning meeting. And, it's not for everybody. There's no doubt about it. And the earlier we can find that out and see that, the better. But most of those people run. I mean, the people that are, they stand out. Yeah. Those people that don't fit, they stand out pretty quickly. So, we're kind of over that hump, I feel like, in this journey that we're on. And we just don't deal with that as much as we once did.
So from a flow perspective, so there's probably still some people out there saying, oh, this is crazy, this doesn't work, we can't set up a line in our custom shop. But tell us a little bit, like, how has the throughput numbers been over the last, you tell me, 5 or 10 years? Sure.
So I said we had a point system. I mentioned that earlier. I remember when our biggest goal was, to get to 100 points. And I remember when it was 50 points. But just using those numbers, we went from 50 to 100 over a period of time. We got up to as high as 150 a day, and we started setting our eyes on 200. But we've had some staffing challenges and some supply or just jobs. So we've dialed that back. Currently, we're running around 135. But we feel like we have capacity for 150 to 200. We probably need a couple more heads in the factory, but we're trying to be consistent with that. That's really our goal this year, is to really be consistent with that.
And I think the important thing to make sure that we get is that your shop floor staff headcount is not increasing dramatically, is not increasing proportionately to the points increase.
Yeah, so that's really critical, right? So I told you earlier in this, when we found lean back in 2012, 2013, we had 9. We have 11 on our shop floor now. I don't know how many X more we're doing in gross sales and throughput, but it's a lot. But we found flow, we found processes. We encourage our team every day to continuously improve, and it served us well.
Yeah, and just for the record, only because I have a little bit of an inside track, is we're not talking like when you had your 8 or 9 people when you discovered this lean thing and started really diving in on flow in your shop. You said you guys are doing about $800,000 or $900,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're not talking double or triple.
Yeah, we did
quadruple.
About 7 million last year.
So. Okay, I didn't want to give it away.
Yeah, no, it's fine. But we're pretty open.
We're talking 7 times as productive. 7 times. If you could wave a magic wand to a woodworker and say, what would you do for 7 times the throughput? We would do anything for that.
Let me put some context around it, though. Okay, So, and those are real numbers, certainly. But we've added CNCs. I told you when we began, we were cutting stuff with a table saw.
Right.
We were very primitive, and all of our equipment, technology, engineering, there was no engineering. We were doing things from paper drawings and things like that. So we've built a support staff around it, where I told you I was the only guy in the office. Now we have 10 people between engineers, sales staff, management, those kind of things. So we've built a lot of things around this to subordinate that and really help. We make money by cabinets being built, or really cabinets being installed, technically is what we say at our company. But we've built the systems and a support staff around them where 10, 11 guys can produce that kind of numbers. And obviously price points have went up is the other factor that comes into play.
Sure.
We're not charging today what we did 10, 12 years ago. So there's a couple of factors.
But I don't think that anybody can deny that it's pretty good. Like that, it's a pretty radical turnaround from when you started to where you are today. So
I appreciate that. But we're pretty proud of it. We're proud of the team that we built and the culture we got, for sure. We couldn't do it without the people that day in, day out, that show up and give us 110%. So shout out to my team, for sure.
So we're coming to the end of our podcast, but before we wrap this up, I think there's probably a lot of people that now maybe conceptually are on board. They're like, okay, Dustin told us this is how we're gonna do it, and they want to do it, and they want to, do we just go in Monday and rip apart all the benches and make a line and say go for it, or like how did you get from where you were or where other people may be now to where you are? Maybe outline like how can someone make that transition?
It's happened over a decade of time, so it's really hard to really map that. But I can say it starts with demand, customer demand, and treating customers right, valuing your customers. And so we've always been pretty fortunate and blessed to have lots of work. So for us, it really drove us to improve, so we could deliver a high quality product on time, consistently. But the day-to-day of it is one foot in front of the other. I wish I had something sexy for you, but it's the little steps every day that really day-to-day, it's really hard to see, but you stretch those out over weeks and months and years, in my case, and when you can reflect on that and look back, you can really see the progression. So I don't have a silver bullet for you today, but I would just say start somewhere and start making baby steps towards this. I certainly wouldn't go out in your plant tomorrow and rec shop and try to create this. But what could you do next week, this month, that would get you one step closer to it?
Would you recommend maybe? So if I had four guys all operating at their own benches, and introduce them to this concept, maybe read 2-second lean, maybe listen to this podcast, right? Maybe start there, and then say, hey, why don't we just work in pairs? Let's just see how pairs work. Yeah. And then when because it's gonna work, right? And when that works, go, hey, why don't we take the 2 pairs and why don't we get you guys working? Because I think that the success of something like a radical change like this has to be systemic from the people up, not from the top down, because they're going to find 5 million ways for it not to work.
Right. Well, I would say too is growing as a leader, your team has to trust you, and definitely at places along this way, I had to do things in this regard and others where I just said, hey guys, I need you to trust me. Give me a little bit of faith. I haven't steered us wrong yet. Made some mistakes certainly, but let's try this. Let's put a sunset on it. Let's do it for a week, a month, whatever. Let's just try it. See what happens.
I love this.
And I want you guys to give me 2 things. I want you to do your best and try. That's it. Do those 2 things, and we may fail miserably, and we certainly have at some things that we've tried. But if you'll do those 2 things, we're going to be better off certainly. And we're going to learn maybe not how to do it better, but maybe not, or how not to do it. Right. May come with this, and that's good. And now we know something that doesn't work.
Really, I think you. Sorry to interrupt. You just nailed something that just sparked a chord, which was give them an end date. Because if you say, hey, we're going to switch, then it's like, oh my God, because it's going to suck in the beginning. It's going to be hard, and they're like, oh, I don't want my life to suck forever. But if you say, hey, look, we're gonna run this for 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks, we can go back, or we can go forward. We can take what we've learned. I think that probably is the golden nugget is 1, experiment. Let them experiment. Let them know it's okay to fail. And 2, give it that sunset that you said. Give it that. We're going to run it for 2 weeks or a month, and then don't panic. If it's going wrong, the pay's still the same. I promise. Your paycheck's going to clear. It's the company's going to take the hit for the learning that we all do, and carry forward. I think that's huge. Let them know it's okay to fail, and let them know it's not forever.
Well, you got to try new things. You got to be willing to be vulnerable and to let your team be vulnerable and try things. And they have to feel comfortable doing that and know that there's no repercussions. Their pay is still going to be the same, and you have to foster that kind of teamwork.
And isn't that? I think that's a great segue to wrap this up. Is the whole thing we've been talking about is how do we create flow down the line? And so physically, everybody in their brain is right now, they're scrambling around their factories, which is what we want. We want to evoke some change, but doesn't it all just boil down to teamwork? It boils down to the leader giving some direction, everybody being willing to follow it and work together to make it work, not to work against it. And then that all just comes beautifully together in what we would say it's teamwork. Win, lose,
Certainly.
draw, we're a team.
Yeah, you're better off as a team, and you know that's been proven time and time again. So, yeah, I would trust your team, and they have to trust you.
I love it. Well, I think everybody's been listening probably for 40 minutes now or so. I haven't seen the timer, but I just wanted to thank you for coming on the show and sharing all of that wisdom with us. I can already see the comment section just exploding. So before everybody starts, we probably already have a plant tour video on our Quantum Lean website of your factory, but if we don't, I will make sure that I will get some B-roll to go along with this podcast so people could see what you've got going on there. And I mean, if you've got the time and Dustin has the time, boy oh boy, get down there and see what he's got going on. He's sitting here looking at me. He's the most humble guy on the planet. If I had a factory like his, I don't know what I'd do. But yeah, thanks for joining us on the show and sharing what you did. You're doing something so unique that I was just so excited to know that you were going to be here and talk to everybody about it. So
yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for what you do for this community. You're a big voice and a personality that a lot of people connect with, and I mean that very genuinely. I've known you for 10, 12 years now, and you know, you're well respected, and thanks for everything you do. Thanks for putting this podcast together for all the people out there. Just glad to be a part of this community. So thanks again.
Yeah, no problem. And so I think for everybody listening, you know, we're putting all of this information out there for everybody. We're not asking for anything. We're not charging a dime for it. All we want to see is everybody improve. And, you know, if you don't mind, you can just hit all of the right buttons. You guys know what they are more than me. The follows, the likes, the comments. And if you could just forward these podcasts to 5 people that you think they would benefit, then that's all we ask. We just want to keep helping the community grow. So that's it. Thank you, Mr. Dustin.
Thank you, man.
We'll see you on the show floor at KBIZ tomorrow.
That's right.
All right, everybody. This is another episode of On the Shop Floor with Dustin Hunter from Hunter Trim and Cabinets.